Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 2, the February 24th, 2021 edition of the Dynamite Show here on the Fight Game Media Patreon, the Fight Game Media Network. Parker Klein here, co-host Paul Fontaine. Paul, how's it going?
It's going very well. And how are you, Parker?
I'm doing really well. This was an interesting episode of Dynamite, but before we get started, I want you to go into your little contest that we're doing as a part of the, let's say, controversial stipulation for the Jon Moxley, Kenny Omega AEW World Championship match.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that tonight. So as I've made it well aware, and if you're in the Patreon, you've probably seen me in the Facebook group, and I am not a fan of this stipulation or the idea of this match, which was reconfirmed by Jon Moxley's interview that he did with Dave Meltzer and Garrett Gonzalez on Wrestling Observer Radio, which promised everything I was afraid of. So I do not want to order this pay-per-view. I do not want to see this match. But what I've said is, if we can get 5 listeners, and I understand a lot of you listening today probably aren't on the Patreon yet based on what Garrett's telling me, so 5 people sign up for the Patreon for 1 month and tell Garrett it's because of my challenge. I will order the pay-per-view and I will watch this match under protest, and I'll go into it with open eyes, and I will try to understand why these two men want to do this to each other.
Well, that sounds, if that's not motivation to buy or to join this Patreon, I'm not sure what is. If you are listening to this in some sort of free access way, to access this show every single week, it's just $2.99 a month. That's a crazy deal for the amount of content you get. Plus, you get all the perks of the Fight Game Media Network. So that's joining the Facebook group and interacting with everybody that's a part of the team. So it's a great deal, and we hope if you're listening to this, you consider joining. All right, Paul, should we dive into the show?
Oh, absolutely. We got a lot to get into here.
Yeah, so this was the February 24th edition of Dynamite. The show opener was Jon Moxley defeating Ryan Nemeth, who this is his 3rd match, I think, in 5 weeks. Nemeth, that is, on Dynamite, which is pretty impressive considering how much AEW spreads out their talent. But this was just a short match, pretty decisive victory for Moxley. And the real, I think, important aspect of this segment was, of course, Moxley's post-match promo. It was just announced this week that he is the Wrestling Observer Wrestler of the Year. And I think he completely lived up to that billing with this post-match promo, which I thought was fantastic. You might have mixed opinions, Paul, but I think he did such a great job seamlessly integrating his one-of-a-kind conviction and passion for pro wrestling to where you see, it feels like this is actually Jonathan Good, right, sharing what he's saying on TV. And then at the same time, he's selling this pay-per-view to the best, like the very best ability that he can. I mean, he said exploding barbed wire deathmatch 3 times in this pay-per-view, and it made it seem like, obviously to your chagrin, this is going to be something death-defying and legitimately dangerous to the point where, I mean, it's going to be one of those can't-miss moments in professional wrestling. So in that sense, I thought it was a really successful segment and one of Moxley's best promos yet, which is saying something considering how many great promos he's had in the last year.
Okay, so quoting his promo, and I'm glad you recapped it here at WrestlingObserver.com. Fire, blood, burns, torture, agony. Does this make you feel revolted and disgusted? Yes, John, it does. So why would I want to pay $40 or $50 to buy a pay-per-view that I will see fire, blood, burns, torture, and agony? That's what I don't understand. And so I am sure that there is a segment, and I'm sure it's a large segment of the people watching this that would have been compelled to buy this pay-per-view based on his promo. The passion that he had, I believed every word he said. It was a great promo, but it reconfirmed why I don't want to watch this match. But that said, I'm sure it also reconfirmed in probably the vast majority of people watching why they do want to buy this pay-per-view. So it was an effective promo. It accomplished its goal, and that is to get people that were already hyped for this match. Just from the words that Kenny Omega said last week, Jon Moxley explained it in this promo. He told you what's going to happen. He promised it, and he has been on record as saying he does not like to not deliver on promises. So in that sense, if you're excited about fire, blood, burns, torture, and agony, you're going to have a great time watching this show. Unfortunately, that's not me.
All right. Well, I mean, I think we're in agreement that it was extremely effective in what it set out to do.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, the reaction different between the two of us. I'm gonna do my best. I mean, I won't be successful.
No,
but I'm gonna do my best next week to sell you on this match. Okay. All right. So we got a video. Essentially previewing the Archer Phoenix match. This was on Twitter last week, so this was on social media platforms, but essentially Archer said he was going to easily beat Phoenix, but Phoenix shot back in Spanish, and he actually sounded like super convincing in Spanish. I thought Phoenix came across like a big deal in that promo, and then they kind of brawled after that. I thought it was a good little segment. You
missed the video recap of the Moxley Omega feud, which was awesome.
Yes, yeah. Before that, there was just a recap of all their interactions, the big moments, like Moxley appearing behind Omega, and I think that was the first episode of Dynamite, something like that, and then the paradigm shift through the glass and all that, and of course their crazy death match too. All right, so then the Young Bucks. This was clear foreshadowing. The Young Bucks taking a photo with their parents in front of a truck that had their sort of likenesses on the truck. So that was returned to later on in the show. We had Team Taz, that was Ricky Starks and Brian Cage defeating Griff Garrison and Brian Pillman Jr. of the Varsity Blondes. I thought this was a really solid match. Garrison's got a really nice hot tag, I think, that he's shown a few times now on Dynamite that gets this team over. So I thought this was a very effective match. Good, solid action throughout. Starks and Cage won decisively. Cage ended up pinning Pillman with the drill claw. But then after the match, we got Sting with more physical involvement. So the lights went out and a video played of Darby Allin essentially emerging from the body bag that Team Taz kidnapped him with a couple weeks ago. And then Sting's music played. He came out with a body bag. Everybody assumed it was going to be Darby Allin in there, but it ended up being Hook, Taz's son, which I thought was a really nice misdirection there. Sting pointed at the rafters. Darby Allin ziplined down essentially with his skateboard for some reason. And then the two beat down Cage and Starks. And then the most notable moment of this segment was Sting landing a Stinger Splash and then hitting the Scorpion Death Drop on Cage in the middle of the ring. So I thought this was a really effective build for the second straight week for this street fight after what I thought was a pretty cold, I should say, build for a month or two there.
I really like this match. Both teams look great. I thought that Brian Pillman Jr. and Ricky Starks had really good chemistry together. Like the moves that they were doing, like it looked like they'd worked together a lot. And I don't know if they have, but like they just seem to be on everything. And I really enjoyed it. And I like the hot tag that Garrison did. And Cage looked really good in here as well. Like the match was great. The post match angle that you mentioned was really good. I kind of figured it was Hook inside, and the fact that it was made it even better. Like I like that you can predict where things are going and then they actually happen, which is cool. It makes the viewer feel smart that you could figure that out. And then when you said for some reason ziplined, I mean, this was an obvious callback to Sting, how he used to make his entrance on Nitro, right? So
I was joking about he made the skateboard.
Yeah. I mean, because that's him. But the one thing I didn't like in this, and it's the only thing I didn't like about this whole thing, was the fact that Sting got his revenge on Brian Cage for free on TV when, I feel like that maybe should have been saved for the pay-per-view because that's what you're paying the money for, so you can see. But there's still one more week, so maybe Team Taz will get, we'll get some more heat on Sting and Darby next week, and then they'll want revenge on the pay-per-view. But if they don't do that, I feel like that's a mistake. But for me, who's not planning on buying the pay-per-view, it's great. I got to see it for free.
I think next week we need a long uninterrupted Sting promo.
Good luck with that.
We actually have not, I know, right? We have not gotten a genuine uninterrupted Sting promo since either the second or third week he came back, which I think is crazy because he's like the best talker out there right now. And he could do so much to hype this match. So I'm hoping we get something along those lines next week. All right, so then we had Tony Schiavone interviewing Kip Sabian, Penelope Ford, and Miro about the wedding. They're all mad about it. Miro took essentially started to answer and said that he wanted to wrestle Orange Cassidy and essentially destroy him, but Charles is a different story, Chuck Taylor. He pretty much asked, he was like, Chuck, you can come back and be my butler if you want, but the interview was interrupted with a wacky, childish note asking if Miro and Sabian would wrestle them at Revolution, check yes or no, or maybe. But then that match was signed later in the show, so Miro chewed up the note, and that was that.
Yeah, I didn't like this at all. It was, either this or another segment that we're going to talk about later was probably my least favorite thing on the show.
Yeah, I thought it was fine just to get that match. I mean, finally, we're going to get this match. They've been feuding for 4 months at this point. All right, we got Jake Hager versus Brandon Cutler. Hager won pretty decisively here. Very quick victory. This was only like 3 or 4 minutes. He won with a lariat, which I thought was very interesting. But it was a good little sprint. I think Cutler's like a really talented in-ring talent, and Hager has looked pretty impressive the last few times he's been out there. So this was pretty good. Santana, Ortiz, and Wardlow ran out after the match and attacked Cutler. The Young Bucks ran out to make the save. Matt challenged MJF and Jericho to come out and do their tag title match right here, right now. And Jericho's music hit. It felt like, oh, maybe they're going to do it. But of course, every viewer watching knows it's Jericho in the inner circle. So he and MJF appeared on the video board, and it was revealed that they had attacked Papa Buck, the Young Buck's dad, who had all this like blood over him. They threw him into that truck from earlier that they took a photo on, and they smeared his blood on the Young Bucks likenesses. So essentially their dad was having his blood smeared on their faces on this truck. They tried to make the save, the Bucks did, but and then Matt ran out to pursue MJF and Jericho, but they barely escaped in their vehicle together.
Yeah, this for me, like this was my favorite thing on the show. The angle after the match. The match was fine. It was a Hager squash. Cutler's a good jobber. And that's not an insult at all. I like watching Brandon Cutler. The thing was, like, this is another one where you could see it coming. You saw Papa Buck last week interacting with Jericho. You saw him earlier in the show. You knew something was going to come about this. And then when the inner circle didn't come out, then you knew, okay, there's probably something going on. And literally right before they cut to Papa Buck, I was like, oh, they got Papa Buck. So it's like, it's great. And then the really interesting thing here, that I don't quite understand, but I think it's going to play in somehow, was Nick Jackson and the Good Brothers got into the ambulance with Papa Buck, and Matt stayed back, which I thought was very strange. But so I feel like they didn't do that by accident, and there's going to be something more of that. I don't know what, but it's kind of very strange. Oh, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So after the break, Papa Buck was loaded into the ambulance, and yes, like you said, it was Nick and the Good Brothers who joined him in the ambulance, where Matt sort of stayed behind, and he was pretty heated.
And where was Mrs. Buck? Was she? Did she get? The ambulance?
Maybe she's in the inner circle. I didn't see her in there.
I don't think she's in the inner circle, but I didn't see her in the ambulance.
Yeah. All right. So. Yeah. So we had a video hyping next week's Cody Rhodes and Red Velvet versus Shaquille O'Neal and Jade Cargill match. This was like the Moxley Omega video from earlier, just recapping all the major points in the storyline so far. I thought it was effective, and I thought it got over that Shaq is like kind of this standoffish dude. It wasn't just, it didn't come across like Shaq was treating this as just like a fun thing to do, which I really appreciated, because I think with someone like him and his personality and of course his star power, it could really come across that way. So I thought this was effective for what it was. Next, we had Hangman Page defeating Isaiah Cassidy in a singles match. This was a long match. It's been like 13 minutes. I thought it was a good showcase for Cassidy, who looked solid in this major singles contest. Early on, Matt Hardy got ejected after Alex Reynolds and John Silver ran out and essentially pleaded Hangman's case after some interference stuff that Hardy was involved in. So Cassidy did essentially wrestle without a second for most of the match. So it made him look pretty legitimate. Took Paige a long time to put Cassidy away, but I did think the match was good, so I didn't mind it. Cassidy went for a springboard destroyer at the end, but Paige caught it and hit the Deadeye, so not the buckshot lariat, but the Deadeye, the vertebreaker, I guess, something similar, for the pin. And then after the match, Hardy cut a promo over the PA and said he would hurt the Dark Order that Paige cared so much about, emerging from the ramp with Alan Five Angels having attacked him, and then he tossed him through the ringside table. So that heated up Hardy and Paige.
Yeah. So real quick, I wanted to reference a video of Cody and you know.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So we got to see a little bit of Jade in the ring in this video, which was really cool. But it makes me wonder, like, it was almost like what we wanted to see last week with Shaq and Jade. Like, I don't know if maybe they just didn't like the footage that they filmed, so they decided to show them shooting hoops, or what was the story there. But I mean, it looked good, and it was really interesting with Shaq at ringside. There was like no comedy. Even some of the stuff in this feud that has happened that kind of came off comedic, they edited out of the video package. So I thought that was really effective, like you said. This match with Hangman and Isaiah Cassidy, I was really impressed with Isaiah Cassidy. I think that he has had like less than 10 singles matches in his career, and to be able to, you know, I don't know how long this match was. It felt like maybe like 12 or 13 minutes, and to have a match like that on a big stage like this and have it come off as well as it did was kudos to him. I mean, the only other one I can remember seeing him in was that one he had with Jericho, and this was better than that. And it got over everything it needed to do. Hangman, it solidified the friendship between Hangman and the Dark Order. And if you watch BTE, you saw that they're now friends with benefits, as they say. So he's not in the Dark Order, but they're friends, and they've got each other's back. And I think that's really cool. But it also solidified the heel turn. And Isaiah Cassidy's got this new gimmick that he's doing. It's the VIP, and on BT, Matt gave him a chain that says VIP, and he had VIP on his tights. So he's kind of separating a little bit from Mark Quinn, which I don't necessarily think the tag teams can break up or anything, but it's good to have them have distinctive personalities. And I thought this was just really, really effective. And I expect we'll see like maybe a 6-man next with Hangman and the Dark Order against TH2 and Cassidy. Like, I don't know, maybe Mark Quinn might be injured, or what everyone's probably thinking, when you don't see somebody for a couple weeks.
Well, I'll get to it later, but we are getting that big Dark Order versus Matt Hardy and Co. match next week. But
there you go.
We'll get into that when we go through the show.
Sure.
Yeah. So Alex Marvez cut up to Kenny Omega. This was more wacky stuff from like a continuation of last week. I didn't enjoy this. Marvez caught up to Kenny Omega and Don Callis, who were building something called a Moxley Extermination Chamber, which sounds very similar to Elimination Chamber, which happened this weekend in WWE. I don't think that was a coincidence. Omega got all excited about the violence and just sent Marvez away. This is so weird because while they're working on this in like a shop, there's this definitely loud like handsaw going on at the same time that made it impossible for me to understand what Omega was saying. Even I was watching this with headphones. This wasn't even on like a TV or anything. So I have no idea what this was.
Well, this was, and I'm going to reference something from before you were born, although you may have seen it. This was Undertaker in the shop building a casket for Kamala. Like, this was a direct ripoff of that. And I don't know why, because it was horrible. But that's like, I mean, the people watching in our Facebook group, like anybody of a certain age remembers that, and that's what this came off as. But I mean, Omega, you're a great wrestler. You were my pick for not like most outstanding wrestler, not the Lou Thez Award for last year. Stick to the wrestling, stay away from the comedy. That's all I got to say about this.
So we got a recap of the Monday Women's Eliminator tournament matches. I like these little recaps. I do want to talk about this because my one little improvement is that I wish we I wish they gave us just a little bit about any of their personalities. Like, what is it about any of these people, aside from, someone like Sakura or Sakazaki, who's been on Dynamite before, what is it about any of these wrestlers that has earned them this shot to be a part of the Women's Eliminator Tournament for the Women's World Championship in AEW? I know all of these wrestlers and I'm familiar with all of them, but I would imagine the vast majority of Dynamite's audience isn't. And you don't have to belittle them by, walking through who each and all of them are, but just give me 10 seconds about their personality. I think that would go so much further to establishing these people and getting them excited, getting viewers excited to see them when they're eventually able to make it across to America.
I agree with that, because I'm one of those ones that doesn't know anything about like 12 of the 16 people in this, or no, 9 of the 16 people in this tournament.
Yeah. So here we go. So speaking of the tournament, we had Nyla Rose defeating Britt Baker to advance. There were a lot of mixed opinions on this match. I thought they worked really hard. I don't want to deny their hard work because they did give it a ton of effort, and the closing sequence ended up being really good with some nice near falls. But I thought the majority of this match was really slow and awkward and sloppy, and featured like the biggest go away heat in all Elite Wrestling right now, which is Rebel doing anything. I want her off my TV like at all times, and I don't really feel that way about much in professional wrestling. So I just don't get like how that adds any sort of excitement or build to any sort of program that Britt Baker is in. I think she's enough of a personality on her own that she doesn't need this annoying sidekick. But essentially, this was a lot of brawling, a lot of interference, and then towards the end, there were some good near falls where Baker had attacked Rose's arm throughout the match. Rose actually landed the Beast Bomb, but couldn't make the cover in time because her arm had been attacked throughout the entire match. So that was a really good near fall. No, can't recall anybody kicking out of the Beast Bomb before. It could have happened, but I can't recall it. So that was a big good near fall. But Baker could not end up applying the lockjaw despite having the glove on, and so Rose was able to hit a second Beast Bomb to win and advance. She will face the winner of Thunder Rosa and Riho I believe on Monday.
So I like this match for the most part. There was, I'd say, in the middle to later part of the match, it got a little clunky, and I think that maybe is where you've got your mixed opinions. So the beginning part was really good, and the finish was really good. I agree with you on Rebel, and I'm somebody who was a big fan of hers when this act was first put together. I thought she added a lot to it, but ever since they started doing that, the dentist segment thing, whatever, the waiting room, I just thought like Rebel was horrible on those, and ever since then she's been horrible, and now I think Brit has outgrown her. I think she needed that to kind of get that personality out of her, but now that she has done that, she doesn't need her anymore, and I hope it. But the problem is now at some point, like if she dumps her, it's going to come off as a face turn, and that's not what they want. She needs to be a heel, so maybe she just goes away, like you say, and I don't want anybody to quote unquote go away, but I think it might be best for the character of Britt Baker if she didn't have the anchor of Rebel. I was surprised at the result of this until I thought about it for 2 seconds and realized that we're probably going to see Rio and Nyla Rose, which is I think going to be a better match than Rio and Britt Baker, because I love the dynamic of the native beast against the smaller Japanese. We saw Shida and Rose have some really good matches, and I think Rio and Rose has a chance to be even better. And I think no matter what happens, one of those two will face Shida in the finals, and that'll be a great match on the pay-per-view.
Yeah, I completely agree. I definitely think Rose winning was the right choice here. With Riho coming back, considering how important she is to this division, you want her in as many positions to succeed as possible, and I think a match with Rose sets her up for that way better than a match with Baker, at least for now. Yeah. So we have our schedule for the next couple weeks. Next week on Dynamite, Stack Show. Cody Rhodes and Red Velvet facing Shaq and Jade Cargill. That's a big match. Multiple other big matches on this show, though. This really feels like one of those specials, but it's the go-home show for Revolution. We also have FTR and Tully Blanchard facing all of the Jurassic Express. The finals of the AEW Women's Eliminator Tournament, so that will either be Nyla Rose or Riho against either Yuka Sakazaki or Ryo Mizunami. Paul White will speak for the first time as a member of AEW. Huge news today that he has signed with the company. I mean, obviously the former Big Show major star, and we can actually briefly talk about that, I think, because I think this is a great signing. You even mentioned some of his in-ring stuff that you think he might have a little bit left in the tank there. I'm kind of marginal on that, hit or miss. I'm sure he'd be good for like a program or two, but I think Big Show, Paul White, has been one of the most underrated just talkers and, performers over the last 20 plus years. And I always enjoy him when he's on my screen. And so this is a fantastic pickup and a big name for AEW, in my opinion.
Well, I think, and I'm borrowing something that Brian Alvarez talked about on Wrestling Observer Live. I think that the most effective use of Paul White would be like booking him like Andre the Giant when he was a special attraction. So you don't see him, you see him wrestle a handful of times a year. He always wins. He's never in the title picture, but he's there. He's a top baby face. He's there to give the rub to people that you want to come up. He shows up to help people. And he's still he's younger than people think he is, and he's in the best shape of his career. So I do think that he can go. I wouldn't put him in there for like half an hour with Kenny Omega or anything like that, but there's no reason he couldn't have like a 10-minute match with, Ricky Starks, I don't know. I just threw that name out of my hat. I wouldn't actually book that, but you know what I mean? Like, I think he could have a 10-minute match and be good, or even just like a 2-minute squash, to showcase him. And then, maybe have him be a tag team partner in like a blood and guts match or something like that, to where, you're using him, but you're helping him get other people over. And then of course, like you said, the presence that he has, the experience, the speaking ability, there's so many different ways they can use him. They're going to use him as a commentator on their new show, as they announced on here. And I just think it's a great pickup. And I don't think it'll be the last guy like that we see make the jump, and I think it's really exciting. And for younger people like you, and there's a good guy in our group, Brady, who I don't know if he's a subscriber, hopefully he will be, but like younger guys like you guys, this is what we grew up with in the Monday Night Wars, like just guys going back and forth, and it was so exciting. And I hope to see more of that, and eventually someday maybe somebody from AEW will go the other way, and that'll be exciting too. And if it helps WWE pick up their game, even better.
All right, main event time. We had Lance Archer defeating Rey Fenix. This was for a spot in the Revolution ladder match for a shot at the TNT Championship. So whoever wins that ladder match will face Darby Allin at an upcoming episode of Dynamite. So yeah, Lance Archer advanced, and he is in the match. I thought this match was slightly disappointing based on my standards of the two, because both Archer and Phoenix, I thought, have been out of this world this year in their appearances night in and night out. Phoenix is spectacular, Archer is spectacular, and they've both been spectacular so far in 2021. So I expected something spectacular, and while I thought they were spectacular moments in this match, it did not come together as an actual up and down wrestling contest that built and built and built to a finish. It felt a lot like, I don't know if you watched Wrestle Kingdom, but Hiromu and El Phantasmo from Wrestle Kingdom, which just a lot of moves and very little connecting them. So I felt it was a little bit disjointed in that sense, but there was a ton of spectacular stuff in the match. Phoenix did his crazy tope suicida where he lands in the crowd. Archer did his rope walk moonsault. Phoenix came back with a rope walk kick of his own. They teased the time limit draw, actually, and I actually thought that's what they were going to do and just have both of them in the match. But I guess TV time is the technical term there. But as we got right up at the end of the show, Archer did hit the blackout to win and advance to Revolution.
So a few things about this. First off, I'll reference what you just said about, teasing the time limit draw. Tony Schiavone actually brought up that if there went to a time limit draw, that they wouldn't both be in the match, that it would only be 5 in the match, which I thought was an odd choice because it would have been more plausible to think what you said, that they could both advance into the match as opposed to thinking that neither one of these guys would be in that match. So I thought that was a bit of a mistake. And another mistake on commentary, and this really took me out of the match, I will say. And I like the match, like what you said.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. Tony Schiavone said this is an early match of the year candidate. And I was going to ask you about that. And I was interested to hear what you were going to say about this match because you watch everything. And I think this was a fine match. Like there's nothing wrong with this match. It was even, I would even say, a good match, but it was nowhere close to a match of the year candidate. And by saying that, it took me out of it because I'm thinking, well, I can't believe anything you're going to say. And this is back to Schiavone in his Nitro days. This is the greatest night in the history of our sport and all this. And I'm sure if Schiavone hears this or if somebody tells him about it, he's going to block me on Twitter again. And I'm sorry, Tony. I love you. I really do. I'm a big fan of your work, but you don't need to be saying that. Having said all that, what I do want to say about this is that Tony Khan was on Wrestling Observer Live yesterday. He is a big fan of both of these guys. He did everything he could to try to make sure that this was a huge match that people were going to be into, that it was going to have the most eyeballs on it as possible. One thing you will notice in this match, there was no commercial breaks. They always have a commercial break in the main event of Dynamite. They did not do that here. That tells me that Tony wanted the maximum audience for this match. And I'm sure it was him that was telling them to say, this is a match of the year. They piped in, this is awesome chants. Tony Khan really was invested in this match because he sees a lot in both of these guys. And for the reasons you said, they're both very talented guys. The one other problem I had with this was Lance Archer, who I don't know his ranking. I know he's usually in the top 5. Phoenix is number 3. I saw that. These two are fighting for a chance to be in the match. That Scorpio Sky, who hasn't been on TV in I don't know how long, 3-4 months. And the last time we saw him, he lost to Shawn Spears. He was put into the match. Penta, who hasn't been on TV in 2 months, is put into the match. But Rey Fenix, who's the number 3 contender, is not in the match. I have a bit of a problem with that. But it was a good match. And it was a great show.
Yeah, I thought the first hour was pretty flawless. I thought that it did dip a little bit in the second hour with some hit or miss stuff overall, but I did enjoy the show a lot. And like I said, a super stacked lineup for next week. In our Paul White discussion, I forgot to mention those other 2 matches. So we have the big 10-man tag with Dark Order facing Matt Hardy, Private Party, and the Hybrid 2. So that's a huge match. And then our next qualifier, talking about what you were just saying, is Preston Vance against Max Caster for a spot in the Revolution ladder match. So that is what we have for next week. So we are completely out of time, Paul. If you're listening to this, thank you so much for listening, especially if you're listening free. Please check out the Fight Game Media Patreon. It's well worth the time and money to check that out. We put a lot of effort into our content, and we think you'll enjoy it.
All right. Yeah. And remember the challenge, 5 people to sign up for the Patreon. Let Garrett Gonzalez know that you did it for Paul Fontaine's challenge, and I will order Revolution. All
right. This has been the Dynamite Cast for Paul. This is Parker. Thank you for listening.
Out.